Welcome to the Facilitators Deep Dive Podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery. All right, so we're diving into Zombie Scrum Survival Guide today, and
Yeah, this one's pretty interesting. Lots to unpack.
the title itself,
I know, right? Zombie Scrum? It's catchy.
definitely grabs your attention.
You know, it makes you think about those teams that are just kind of like going through the motions.
Oh yeah, totally. Like they're alive, but not really.
Exactly. And it can happen to anyone.
Not just software teams, right?
Right. Anyone who's worked on a team, really, you've probably felt it.
The feeling of just spinning your wheels.
Yeah, exactly. And the book does a great job of explaining why that happens. And
what to do about it, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's packed with practical advice. Like one of the things it talks about is this thing called checklist Scrum.
Checklist Scrum. Okay, that sounds kind of ominous.
Yeah, well, it's basically when teams are like so focused on just like checking off boxes.
Like they're following the steps, but
not really understanding the why behind it all.
Ah, I see. So it's like going through the motions without
Actually delivering any real value. Yeah.
That reminds me of that case study in the book about that company that spent like 2 years.
Oh, yeah, the content management system.
Yeah, they built this whole system, tons of features.
And never actually released it.
Never released it. Wow.
They just kept adding more stuff, more features, thinking it would be perfect.
But they ended up losing clients and revenue.
Exactly. Because they weren't focused on what really mattered, which is, you know, delivering value to their stakeholders.
So how does the book actually define zombie scrum?
Well, it says...
Because I'm guessing it's more than just like missed deadlines or a messy project plan.
Yeah, it's deeper than that. It's about teams going through the motions of like all the Scrum events.
Okay, so like...
daily stand-ups, sprint reviews, all that stuff.
Okay.
But they're not really engaged or committed to actually like improving.
So they're basically just like pretending to do Scrum.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, we've all been in those meetings, right? Where everyone's there, but...
No one's really paying attention.
Exactly. So it goes way beyond just software teams.
Absolutely.
But the book, like, really digs into, like, why this happens, right? Like, the root causes of this infection.
Yeah, and it's fascinating how interconnected these causes are. Like, it all starts with, you know, really understanding the purpose of your product.
The purpose, yeah, like, why are you even building this thing?
Exactly. If you don't know why, then how can you build the right thing?
It's like setting off on a road trip without knowing where you're going.
Right. You might end up somewhere.
But it probably won't be where you wanted to go.
Exactly. And then on top of that, you have all these assumptions about like stakeholder needs.
Stakeholder needs, right? Like, who's actually going to be using this thing?
Yeah. Teams get so caught up in their own little world, they forget to actually like talk to the people who will be using the product.
They just assume they know what people want.
And that's a recipe for disaster.
It is. It reminds me of those times I've ordered something online.
Oh, yeah.
And it looks amazing in the picture.
Totally.
But then it arrives and it's like, not at all what I expected.
Ugh. Yeah, I hate when that happens.
So this whole disconnect between like the developers and the stakeholders.
And it often gets worse because of this like us versus them mentality that can develop.
Between like the business side and the IT side.
Yeah, exactly. Creates all these silos. No one's talking to each other.
It's like a communication breakdown on a massive scale.
Totally. Everyone's talking, but no one's listening.
And then you add to that the fact that a lot of product owners,
Yeah.
they end up just being like order takers.
Right.
They're just relaying requests, but they don't have any real power to like make decisions.
No autonomy, no real ownership.
It's no wonder those sprint retrospectives aren't leading to any actual improvements.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of which, the book mentions this crazy statistic about sprint retrospectives.
Oh, yeah. What was it?
It was from a Zombie Scrum survey, and it found that 44% of teams said their sprint retrospectives don't actually lead to any improvements.
Wow.
So basically,
Yeah,
you're having the meeting.
but nothing's changing.
Exactly. Just going through the motions.
It's like a zombie meeting.
Exactly.
So, okay, we need to bridge this gap between what teams are building and what stakeholders actually need.
Absolutely.
Is the book, like, give us any guidance on how to do that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It really emphasizes involving stakeholders.
Involving them, okay.
Yeah, like throughout the whole process.
Not just at the end, right?
Right. Not just getting feedback at the very end.
So it's about bringing them in for the beginning.
Exactly, and keeping them in the loop every step of the way.
Which is a pretty big shift from that, like, old school waterfall approach.
Yeah, where stakeholders only saw the final product at the very, very end.
So we're talking about, like, breaking down those silos.
Yes, and creating a much more collaborative environment.
But the book also, like, challenges our idea of who a stakeholder actually is.
Right. Oh, totally.
It's not just the person who's paying for the product.
No, it's about identifying the people who will truly benefit from it.
So like the end users.
Yeah, even if they're not the ones like signing the checks.
It's about understanding the real impact the product will have.
Exactly.
Okay, so how do we get these stakeholders more involved? Like, practically speaking.
Well, the book has some pretty radical ideas, like
Right.
literally giving a stakeholder a desk.
A desk.
Yeah, like right next to the development team.
Whoa, so they're like embedded with the team.
Exactly. Constant communication, constant feedback.
That's next level transparency.
It is.
I bet some companies would be like really hesitant to do that.
Oh, for sure.
But I can also see how it could lead to some amazing results.
Absolutely. Breaks down those barriers.
Creates a real partnership.
Exactly. The book also talks about validating assumptions.
Validating assumptions.
Yeah, like making sure you're actually building something valuable. They use this example of an incident management system for the Dutch railways.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And instead of trying to build the whole thing at once,
They took a different approach.
they did, yeah. They adopted this incremental development process. So they would release like small, workable versions of the product.
So they were like constantly getting feedback,
Exactly. And adjusting as they went along
which allowed them
to navigate all the complexities of the project and make sure they were building something truly valuable.
So it's about shipping fast, even if it's not perfect, right?
Yeah.
Just to get that feedback.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
This ship fast mentality seems like a key part of fighting this whole zombie scrum thing.
It is. It's about getting something out there, learning from it, and iterating.
Embracing those small failures.
Yeah, and learning from them. The book also cautions against just blindly copying what other companies are doing.
Oh, like those so-called best practices?
Yeah, exactly. Because
Yeah.
every team is different, right?
So it's about finding your own solutions.
Yes. Through experimentation and learning.
So basically, recognizing those dead processes, understanding where they come from, and then taking action to revive them. It's about creating this culture of continuous improvement.
Exactly. Where teams are empowered to experiment and learn and adapt. And the Zombie Scrum Survival Guide really gives you that roadmap to do that.
It does. It's packed with all these practical experiments and strategies. This has been super insightful so far.
It has.
We've defined what zombie scrum actually is, looked at those 6 root causes,
Right.
and we've even gotten a glimpse of some of those experiments that can help teams revive their processes.
Yeah, and there's so much more to unpack. We'll dive into those experiments more.
We'll look at the role of self-organization too.
That's going to be good. You know, thinking more about this ship fast idea,
Yeah.
it's not just about speed, is it?
No, definitely not.
It's also about reducing risk.
Oh, that's a good point.
The book makes this analogy about steering a ship.
Okay.
You know, if you make these small continuous adjustments
Right.
versus one big massive turn,
Yeah, that's much more likely to...
yeah, they're going to capsize.
Yeah.
And there's this story in the book about a web agency.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
They kept delaying the release of their new CMS,
Trying to make it perfect.
Yeah, adding more and more features, but they ended up losing customers.
Because they never actually shipped anything.
Exactly.
So it's like they were too focused on the product itself.
Yeah.
And they kind of forgot about the bigger picture
Lost sight of the goal.
of delivering value to their customers.
Exactly. And this brings us to another big point.
Okay.
Continuous improvement.
Right. So it's not enough to just ship fast.
No, you got to keep learning and evolving.
So we're talking about analyzing your processes,
Yeah,
identifying those dead ones, and figuring out how to do things better.
exactly. The book talks about single loop learning,
Single loop.
which is just fixing errors.
Okay.
And then there's double loop learning.
Double loop.
That's where you challenge the assumptions that led to those errors.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's like taking a step back and asking,
Yeah.
why are we even doing it this way?
Exactly.
Sometimes, though, continuous improvement can feel kind of overwhelming.
I know what you mean.
Where do you even start?
Well, the book has a ton of experiments you can try.
Oh, like what?
Well, there's one called
Yeah.
Create a Low-Tech Metrics Dashboard to Track Outcomes.
A low-tech metrics dashboard.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
It could be something as simple as a whiteboard
Oh,
or a physical chart
got it.
where you track the metrics that actually matter.
So not just velocity and stuff?
No, things like stakeholder happiness, cycle time,
Stuff that really tells you if you're succeeding.
Exactly.
I love that idea. Making it visual so everyone can see it.
Right.
What other experiments did you like?
Oh, there's one called Focus on What to Stop Doing.
Okay, that's interesting. So instead of just adding more stuff,
You get rid of the things that aren't working.
I like that. It's like decluttering your workspace.
Totally.
Sometimes you got to get rid of the old stuff to make room for the new.
Exactly. And sometimes you run into these impediments.
Impediments, right? Like roadblocks
Yeah.
that prevent you from making progress.
The book talks about using networks to overcome those.
Networks, like
Yeah.
reaching out to other people for help.
Exactly. People who might have faced similar challenges.
That makes a lot of sense. It takes a village, right?
It does. There's an experiment called share an impediment newsletter throughout the organization.
Okay, so you're like sharing your problems with everyone.
Yeah, to spark conversations, collaboration.
I like that.
There's another one called use formal and informal networks to drive change.
So you're identifying the people who can help you make things happen.
Right.
Okay, but let's be real. Continuous improvement can sometimes feel a bit
Yeah.
serious, like all work and no play.
Right.
The book talks about celebrating successes too, right?
Oh, yeah, totally. One of the experiments is called bake a release pie.
Wait, bake a release pie?
Yeah.
I love that. So every time you have a successful release,
You bake a pie.
I am so on board with this idea.
Right.
It's a great way to boost morale, celebrate those wins.
Exactly. And it reinforces those positive behaviors.
Plus, who doesn't love pie?
Right.
Okay, so we've talked about shipping fast, continuous improvement, celebrating successes.
Yeah.
But there's another piece we haven't really gotten into yet.
Which is?
Self-organization.
Yes. That's a big one.
This is where things get really interesting.
It is, because self-organization is at the heart of Scrum.
Right. It's about empowering teams
Giving them the freedom to make their own decisions.
to solve their own problems.
Exactly.
But that can be pretty scary for some organizations.
I know, especially those that are used to like a top-down approach.
Yeah, where everything's dictated from the top.
So how do we create that self-organizing environment?
What does the book say?
Well, remember that concept we talked about earlier, stigmergy?
Stigmergy, yeah, using the environment to guide behavior.
Right, like those physical Scrum boards.
Yeah, those are great visual reminders.
So there's this experiment, use a physical Scrum board.
Okay.
Make your work visible, tangible.
Everyone can see it, interact with it,
Exactly.
creates a sense of ownership.
It does.
The book also talks about the role of Scrum Masters and managers.
Yeah.
They're not there to micromanage.
No, they're there to support the team.
Create that environment where the team can thrive.
Right, they're like gardeners.
Gardeners.
Yeah, they cultivate the soil, provide the right conditions.
But they don't force the plants to grow in a certain way.
Exactly.
That's a great analogy.
And another important point.
Yeah.
Don't just copy what other companies are doing.
Oh, right, those best practices.
Yeah, because what works for one team.
Might not work for another.
Exactly.
So find your own solutions.
Through experimentation.
Trial and error.
Exactly. So are there any experiments that can help teams like actually become more self-organizing?
I'm glad you asked.
Because there are a bunch. One that stands out is called find a minimum set of rules for self-organization.
Minimum set of rules.
Yeah, so you figure out the essential rules
Got it.
and get rid of all the unnecessary ones.
So it's like creating a framework.
Yes, but not a straitjacket.
Okay, so you have some structure, but you still have freedom.
Exactly. The book suggests using a technique called min-specs
Inspect.
to help define those rules.
Interesting.
It's a collaborative process, so everyone's involved.
That makes sense.
And then what about those times when teams need to ask for help?
Yeah, that's important.
There's an experiment called express clear requests for help.
Okay, so you're not just like, help.
No, you got to be specific.
Tell them exactly what you need.
Right. And give clear responses too.
Communication is key.
It is. The book also talks about observing team dynamics.
Observing team
So
dynamics.
yeah, like noticing those subtle patterns.
That might be holding the team back.
Exactly. There's an experiment called observe what is happening.
Yeah, so you're like a detective.
Yeah, looking for clues.
To figure out what's really going on.
Exactly.
I love it.
It's about developing that awareness.
And then using those observations to help the team improve.
Right.
I'm starting to see how all of this fits together.
Yeah.
Self-organization, continuous improvement, those experiments.
It's all about creating that environment where teams can flourish
Where they can be agile, adaptable.
and deliver real value.
Exactly.
It's about recognizing that building a great team
Yeah.
is about more than just checking boxes.
It's about creating a culture.
Where people feel empowered and trusted.
A culture of continuous improvement.
Exactly. It really is Giving people that space to try new things.
Yeah, to experiment, make mistakes, learn from them.
Exactly, and to grow. The book also talks about asking powerful questions.
Oh, powerful questions. Interesting.
Yeah, to help teams break out of those, like, ruts.
Get them thinking differently.
Right, and achieve a higher level of performance.
Oh, so like what kind of questions are we talking about here?
Well, there's this experiment in the book. It's called Create Better Sprint Goals with Powerful Questions.
Create better sprint goals with powerful questions.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me more.
It's all about using questions to help teams define their sprint goals.
So instead of just like listing out tasks,
Yeah, you dig deeper.
you figure out the why behind those tasks.
Exactly. Like, what are you really trying to achieve?
What's the purpose?
Right. And the book gives you a bunch of example questions, like, what would delight our stakeholders this sprint?
Ooh, that's a good one. Gets you thinking about the impact.
Exactly. There's another one.
Yeah.
What worry about our product is keeping you up at night?
Whoa, that's a tough one.
It is, but it gets to the heart of those underlying anxieties.
I guess you confront those fears.
Right. And then there's this one.
Okay.
What is the worst way to spend the upcoming sprint?
Oh, wow. I like that one. Makes you think about those potential pitfalls.
Yeah, it forces you to prioritize to make sure you're focusing on the right things.
It's amazing how just asking a few questions
Right.
can really shift the team's perspective
Totally. It's like shining a light on those blind spots.
and illuminating the path forward.
Exactly.
And that's what this book is all about, right?
It is, giving you those practical tools and strategies.
So you can fight those dead processes.
Yeah, and create a more, vibrant work environment.
This deep dive has been incredible.
It has. We've covered so much ground.
We've really unpacked this whole zombie scrum thing.
We have.
We looked at the symptoms, the causes, the solutions.
All those practical experiments.
Yeah, things that teams can actually start doing today.
Exactly, to bring their processes back to life.
It's been a real pleasure diving into this book with you.
Likewise, it's a fantastic resource.
It really is. I think anyone who's feeling stuck at work could benefit from it.
Yeah, whether you're using Scrum or not.
It's a reminder that we don't have to settle for those soul-crushing routines.
We have the power to change things.
To create work environments that are actually, enjoyable.
Where people can thrive.
Where they can be creative and productive.
And engaged.
Exactly. So, to our listeners,
yeah,
if you're ready to fight those zombie Scrum demons,
grab a copy of Zombie Scrum Survival Guide.
Join the resistance. Let's create a world where work is actually fun.
I'm in.
Until next time, happy scrumming. See you next time on the Facilitators Deep Dive Podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery. Until next time.
See you then.